Hey everybody, Kyle Goth here from GoatFilmReviews.com and the Goat Film Reviews YouTube channel, and I've got my quick reaction to the new film, The Exorcist Believer. This is the 6th installment of the Exorcist franchise. It's considered a reboot. It's kind of ignoring everything except for the original film, while not outright making them non-existent. David Gordon Green directs. He worked with Blumhouse, of course, previously on their Halloween trilogy, did all 3 of those films, directed this one. I was a fan of Green's work on the Halloween trilogy. I was positive on all 3 films, with Halloween Kills being one of my favorites in the series. So coming to this film, I had pretty high expectations. I'm a big fan of The Exorcist. I'm a big fan of The Exorcist 3, one of the most underrated sequels of all time. And so I was interested to see what he would bring to this table. And ultimately, The Exorcist Believer is okay. The 24%, I think last time I'd seen it on Rotten Tomatoes, is not really indicative of, I personally think, and I'm not giving a positive recommendation on the film, so I am also part of the negative viewpoint, because I thought the film was okay, and it could have been great. It could have been fantastic. I like the idea of bringing in 2 children that are possessed. The idea is, everyone keeps saying, what if Exorcist, but one more? I get that. I like the idea of there being 2 of them. I like the idea that, they show this in the trailer, of their heartbeats being in sync, as if they were possessed by the same demonic force. I think the first half of the film is actually pretty strong. It's a nice little character drama, much in the same way as how the original Exorcist was more focused on this mother trying to come to terms with what was going on with her daughter, and this family drama element that was at play for most of the first half of the original film, as well with this one. It's in the back half of the film that it becomes more by the numbers. I think Ellen Burstyn being brought back to play Chris McNeil, I think is pretty much entirely wasted. I don't think she's really given anything to do. It's pretty much a glorified cameo. I understand why she did it. The pay was pretty good for what it sounded like, to come back and do this, but I think ultimately the character was unnecessary in the film. And the problem that boasts is that the final exorcism itself isn't really it's not a strong sequence of events. It doesn't really stand out. It's kind of like a lot of other exorcism films. That's the problem of it right there, is because you have Ellen Burstyn coming back, so we are tying this film to the original Exorcist, like the title would have you believe. But I actually think this is one of those films, when we talk about nostalgic beats, I think this film could have used more connections to the originals, or to the previous films in general of any kind, because when it's not linking this film to The Exorcist, it's then becoming like so many of the films that ripped off The Exorcist, or did The Exorcist shtick and never really stuck the landing. And that's kind of the problem with this film, is that when it feels like it's an Exorcist film, is in how it connects to the original, but then the parts of it that they connect to the original don't really feel well thought out and kind of feel like afterthoughts. I don't think the screenplay is particularly strong. I don't think the execution, especially like I said earlier on the final exorcism, I don't think that execution is very strong. The film is just okay. There are things about it I really, really liked. Leslie Odom Jr. does a great performance in the film. I thought the girl that played his daughter was pretty good too, especially she doesn't get to do a ton of vocal performance in terms of dialogue-driven performance, but there's a lot going on behind her eyes, in her facial expressions, that I found quite interesting. Ann Dowd is in the film. I think Ann Dowd does a really great job. Again, she kind of elevates that material. The other girl's family, Leslie Odom Jr.'s daughter's friend and her parents, don't really feel like, they kind of feel very, very stock role. And that's the thing, is it comes back to, with the paint by the numbers aspect of this sequel, comes a lot of actors in this movie, but not a lot of characters in this movie. We're really lacking on dimensional characters that we can understand, and it kind of hits a stockpile of them. So there's some frustrations I have, because again, I really want this movie to succeed. I went into it, even when I saw the low Rotten Tomatoes score, I said, that's fine. It's okay. Because this movie is going to be compared to the original film, and it's of course not going to reach that heights. I don't need it to. That's the big thing for me, is I don't need every film that comes out in a franchise to be better than the original one, or it's worthless. I don't need that. But this one stumbles a few too many times crossing the finish line. And where it ends makes it ultimately feel like a non-ending. And I know this is the first part of a trilogy, so I guess I might have to re-review how I feel about the ending of this film with the next two installments, because I don't know if it's a really tight-knit trilogy, if it's something like the Halloween trilogy that he did, where each film kind of bleeds into the next one a little bit, or if these are going to be like 3 standalone stories that are kind of interlinked by the themes at play. I don't know. But ultimately, this one feels a little bit unimportant, non-sequential, and ultimately, I don't know that you're missing anything by skipping it in the theaters. Maybe check it out when it hits Peacock, because it is Universal Pictures, so it will hit Peacock eventually. I would say check it out because it's worth viewing, but I'm ultimately not thinking it's strong enough to give a recommendation. So those are my thoughts on The Exorcist Believer. Let me know your thoughts down below, and maybe rank your Exorcism or your Exorcist films. There are 6 of them. Let me know if you like the TV show even too. Yeah, the TV show is interesting. I kind of wish they had done more with that. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the film down below. You can also find my thoughts on the film and many other films. It's 31 Days of Horror Time over at goatfilmreviews.com. You can find Goat Film Reviews on Facebook. You can find me personally on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd, and Threads at Almighty Goatman. You can also check out my show, Kyle and Nick on Film, that I co-host with Nick Plotachuk from the St. Paul Filmcast. We have new episodes every single week of that show. All those links I mentioned are down in the description. And we'll see you next time.